Today we are joined by a very special guest. It is Stephen C. Miller, who is the director of the new movie Margaux. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's hot here in SoCal, but I'm good.
Well, it's raining here and super cold in Connecticut, so thank you for joining me today. My
No
first
problem.
question is, what attracted you specifically to want to direct this film?
Oh man, I love horror films. And specifically, I like horror films that take place in one location or a house. Dating back to my favorite is Evil Dead, the Evil Dead series, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. And I just looked at it as an opportunity for me to sort of have fun with that genre, but sort of take a new element, which is the technology element, and incorporate that and it be something that people haven't seen.
Now, did you always have a vision for what you wanted when you started filming this movie? And if so, did this vision change while you were on set?
Yeah, I always had a very specific style I wanted the film to be. I wanted the film to feel very smooth and moving, controlled, because I felt like the AI is very controlled, and to have and sort of over the course of the movie sort of break down. And then you can sort of see that in the filmmaking where it starts out very still and calm, and then throughout the course of the movie moves to handheld and it sort of breaks down because I feel like the technology is breaking down. I really stayed true to that, and I tried to incorporate that even more when we got to the edit. So I was really fortunate to be able to keep that sort of aesthetic and vibe throughout the whole film, which is not always easy and not always obtainable. So yeah, it was something that I pushed for and really stuck with.
Now, I must say, I thought the movie was visually stunning and the house is beautiful. Did it take you guys a while, you and the crew, to find the perfect house, or what made this house different than any other house?
Yeah, I had a very specific idea of what I wanted from the house from day one. And we saw all types of homes. I mean, ranging from, whatever you could think of typical to very modern and crazy. And we just so happened to go out into the middle of nowhere. And someone took a picture and I was like, what is this house in the corner? And they pulled it up. We went out there, we met with the homeowners. And to our surprise, they were in the process of selling the home. So they were really just like, hey, sure, you can do almost whatever, but just, don't affect it too much. So, there's some rooms that we had to physically build on a soundstage
Mhm.
because we just were causing too much destruction that I was too nervous we were going to, mess up this beautiful home. But yeah, it was a process, but, it was something that I was very specific on. And when I saw it, I knew it.
Did you have a favorite scene of yours throughout the entire movie that you love to film?
Yeah, I mean, the opening for me is one of my favorites because it was such a debate on whether or not we should do it, and how big we
Mhm.
should go, and if we should, blow our load right off the top of the movie. And I was like, yeah, we got to tell the audience this is what the movie's about. We have to get them in right away. And I also love Lachlan Monroe, and it felt very sort of a screen cold opening to me, and I think that's sort of like a thing for me to make sure that it had. And so it was the most fun to film. It was the most, exciting practically effect wise because it was all practical. So I just had a lot of fun with it.
Did you face any challenges, and if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, you always face challenges, especially when you're dealing with a studio and what they want, what they think the movie should be, and what you're trying to do. It was just a huge challenge to get some of these visual effects to where I wanted them to be. At the end of the day, I really relied on the visual effects artists to give me the best they could in the time that they had, and I think they did. They delivered really well, and I feel like it was sort of just me having to deal with them one on one and try to block out the noise and what I wanted. And I think it worked. But it's always difficult when you're making a film. But I think that was probably the hardest part for me.
Now, Margot does have several features. Some of my favorites were the customizing rooms, the preparing foods and drinks, and the duplicating humans. Do you have a favorite feature of Margot?
Yeah, I think my favorite feature was the duplication. Like I love the goo aspect of the movie was a very throwback to sort of Ghostbusters 2 and the slime
Hmm.
and the ooze that was happening in that movie. And that was an element we added very late. Originally, she just kind of creates them out of thin air. And I had a very big issue with that. I wanted something I could touch I wanted something that the audience could physically grab a hold of and say, okay, that's what she's creating them with. And so, that was probably my favorite element of the film.
Now, will be spoilers, so if you're seeing this on any of my channels, this is a spoiler, but I have to ask you about the ending because I absolutely loved it. I just made a short film in college, right when I graduated a few months ago, and I made a thriller about, well, I'm not going to go into it, but it had a plot twist and then it had another plot twist, just like your movie. So I really loved it. But I got to ask you, did you want to leave the ending up to interpretation? Because to my interpretation, Drew could have died either early on in the movie when it was off screen, or he could have died when Margaux was Lexi and punched him. What did you
Yep.
want to leave did you want to leave the ending up to the interpretation of the viewers?
Yeah, because I had several theories going into the edit when I was creating it because originally the writers were very stuck on the idea that he was killed at a certain point, and I had an idea that I thought he was killed way earlier in the movie, and that I felt like that he was taken out and used in the chair. My always design was that he probably ate it in the chair when he's getting shaved, and she had replicating him from there. And so I think it's really open to the audience's interpretation on when they feel like he could have died. But I think that's part of the fun of the movie is that you don't really know who is legit and who's not, and what they could be.
Now, another aspect of the ending that I thought was maybe that because he didn't click decline like Hannah did, that just he couldn't leave the property, so he automatically just turned into this goo because once he tries to leave the property. Do you think that could be an ending that the viewers may think as well?
100%, because we had talked about what would happen if they tried to leave the property because they accepted it. Would she strike them down? What would happen? Would she destroy them? And so that is a total interpretation that could possibly happen too. And I think that's sort of something that is a lot of fun.
Well, did you have a favorite death in the film?
Yeah, I think one of my favorites is definitely the ceiling and coming down and just drowning this guy because I think you immediately think he's going to be crushed, but I wanted to take it even a little bit of a different vibe and have him be, just put into the small puddle of water, and how terrifying that is to think that you just have to lift your face up, but you can't, and half in and half out. There was just something about that mixed with the electrocution and all this stuff. It just was a banana scene. And I think it's probably one of my favorites.
That was one of my favorites as well. Now I gotta ask, if a smart home like this existed in the future after making this film, would you trust it and would you live in it?
Hell no, I would not do it. I think I'd be the smart friend that says, "You guys have fun. I'll go, sleep in my cabin," which is probably not a good idea either. But I definitely would not be that guy.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I saw in the credits, I didn't see it online, that Susan Bennett, who's the voice of Siri, voiced Margaux. Was that correct? And if so,
That is
did you
true.
guys do that intentionally? And how did that feel? How did you
Yeah,
make it, how did it feel
100%.
that brought the film together?
Well, we went back and forth on what voice to get. I mean, we went after several different directions. I mean, at one point we were going to go to Drew Barrymore. I mean, at one point we were going to go into a couple other huge horror icons to voice Siri. But ultimately, it came down to I felt like the audience would feel more connected and at home if they recognized the voice subconsciously. And that became, how do we get Siri? And crazy enough, we just hit up Susan Bennett, and she said, "Sure, I'll do it." And it was a wild recording session because Siri is saying things Siri should never say, and it's a lot of fun to hear her do it. So I feel like it really helped the audience settle in subconsciously and really feel like, okay, we know this voice. Even if they have Androids, they still know or have heard Siri. So it was just an element that I think made them feel safe just enough for me to turn it on its head.
Well, I absolutely love the film, and trust me, I'm not just saying that. I'm a big horror and thriller guy, and I really love the twist and everything like that. So the last thing I'll ask you is, do you have any advice for any future film directors who would love to be in your position?
Yeah, man, I think my biggest advice is to just get out there and create. You have a way now to where you can film at any point in time, you can edit at any point in time. You can experiment like no other time in the history of filmmaking. I think get out there creating every day and putting everything you have on film, well, on camera, is crucial right now. I think you can really find yourself and hone in your style a lot quicker than a lot in the past, because you're able to do it so frequently. So for me, I always tell young and up and coming filmmakers to just create.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for the time today. You can watch Margaux starting on September 9th on video on demand. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.